Hello, thank you for listening. I'm Dr. Pauline Baird. I'm a Buxtonian Guyanese and I'm a cultural bearer. I tell the stories about Buxton, my village. People think they know Buxton, but they don't know Buxton. I tell our whispered stories, our hidden and practiced traditions, and our forgotten histories. Let me talk story. Do you know that there was a time when white men roamed the streets of Buxton? And I'm not talking slavery days. I'm talking 1953. In 1953, Guyana had its first democratically elected government. And 133 days later, it was suspended because there were people in Georgetown and in Britain who were very unhappy with the state of affairs. They felt that that government was too radical and it wanted, or it was going to seek, full independence and governance. Among the people who were arrested and put under surveillance was the leader, Dr. Chetty Jagan. He was 36, I think. Ayusi Guyana, who was 29. Ayusi Guyana, our Baba Ayusi Guyana, which means black man from Guyana, was put under surveillance. In my interview with Jennifer Lee, I learned that the Black Watch, as they were called, were in the village and she was a baby. So they used to go over there and play with her because she lived right next door to Guyana. They didn't play with her just for the love of a baby. They were watching a man of our village. So I think of this story and I place women in the story. What were some of the women's roles? Well, other countries have their underground railroad and we had our underground too. And women played an integral part of that underground around that time. When Brother Ovid Abrams talked about Buxtonian women as being militant, I think that this is one of the examples. So let's go. My grandmother told me this story when I was a child. It goes like this. Imagine a Sunday morning in Buxton at 89 Watson Street and Brush Dam. You know what happens on Sunday mornings after church? Everybody's making soup, and my grandmother was no exception. And to make the soup, she got to be pounding the fufu. And as she was pounding between the beats, she heard her neighbor Marigin. Marigin was an East Indian woman married to a Portuguese man, Mr. Marx. Marigin was saying, "Neighbor Griffith, neighbor Griffith." My grandmother said, "What happened? What happened?" She said, "White man a come, white man a come." And my grandmother was in a real frenzy about this white man coming. And so my grandmother ran into the bedroom and she started gathering papers. Well, I have to tell you that my aunt was one of these militant women because they used to have meetings so that they can pass the word along as to what was happening. But you see, I think that they couldn't very well use the regular bell crier to go ring in the streets and tell the story. They had to have it underground. So they had these papers they were distributing surreptitiously. And my aunt was one of those. So my grandmother grabbed the papers, but where was she going to put them? She decided to stuff them in the wood fire under her soup. So she poked them in there and they began to burn. As they were burning, neighbor Marigin was getting more and more anxious. "Neighbor Griffith, them a come, them a come." And my grandmother was hurrying back and forth, burning these papers. Soon enough, Marigin said, "Them there the gate, them there the gate." And my grandmother was ready. So my grandmother grabbed the last set of papers and she didn't have anywhere to put them. She saw her church purse and she stuffed them in the church purse. Soon the soldiers were at the door. Bam, 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 bam. My grandmother opened the door. "Ma'am, we must come in and search." "Yes, sir," said my grandmother. And the soldiers came in. They ransacked the bedroom. They turned up her mattress and her four-poster bed. You remember those kind of bed? Yeah, she had one of those. They You know, they lift up her commode. You know what a commode is? If you don't know, research a commode. They looked everything and they couldn't find any papers. So as they were leaving, the younger of the two white men picked up my grandmother's purse. You know, my grandmother had a church purse. Imagine this is a church purse. And he picked it up and he was about to open the purse. And my grandmother knew something about the British. So she said, sir, you're not supposed to open a lady's purse. Well, I told you last week what my grandmother really feel about gender. She doesn't believe black is lady. But this time she told him lady because my grandmother knew something about them. You know, so she used the white man's words to get her own way. And the owner of the white soldier said, yes, you cannot open this woman's purse. And the white young man, the young soldier, put down the purse. My grandmother nearly peed herself. So he left and he went away. My grandmother was able to save the day by keeping those papers. Now this story tells me that women played very integral roles in the politics of our nation. And as Buxton goes, so does the country. If you have stories like these, listen carefully, because these are the stories you would not hear in the history books. And these are the stories that are not on the lips of many people. But it's time we tell these stories. So dig deep into the archives of your mind and in your family stories, and let's talk about these stories so that our children can hear our women's voices. I will not rest until our women's stories find the annals of history among so many other stories. Walk good and talk story. Thank you.